Cristiano Felicio, born July 7, 1992. There are bad contracts in the NBA, guys who never lived up to the hype, stars who broke down after getting paid, or journeymen who cashed out thanks to a perfectly timed free agency. And then there's Cristiano Felicio. In 2017, the Chicago Bulls handed a little-known Brazilian backup center a 4-year, $32 million deal that instantly raised eyebrows around the league. To this day, some call it the worst contract in NBA history. This wasn't a promising lottery pick getting rewarded too early or a disgruntled star being overpaid to stay. It was a player who averaged 4.8 points and 4.7 rebounds in his best season and had started just 11 games. To this day, analysts still point to that contract as one of the most inexplicable in modern NBA history. But if you zoom in closer, the biggest story isn't just about Felicio's deal, it's about what happened after. For the Bulls, Felicio became the symbol of a front office stuck between directions. They just traded away Jimmy Butler, signaling a full rebuild, yet rewarded a fringe bench player with starter-level money. For Felicio, that deal brought expectations he was never ready to meet. He entered the league as a developmental big with decent hands, a big frame, and some upside as a screener and finisher, but instead of growing into that role, his game regressed. Over the next 4 seasons, Felicio became a ghost on the Bulls' roster, appearing in fewer games each year and becoming unplayable in most situations. By the time his contract ended in 2021, the once promising project had turned into a cautionary tale of what happens when timing and expectations collide. Yet, to Felicio's credit, the situation wasn't entirely his fault. He didn't negotiate the deal himself, Chicago's front office did. He didn't ask to be thrust into a rebuilding team with no structure, few veterans, and constant coaching changes. What Felicio needed was time, development, and a defined role. What he got was 4 years of scrutiny and a league that quickly moved on. His story is a reminder that sometimes getting paid too early can ruin more than it rewards. This is the story of Cristiano Felicio, a once promising big man whose name became synonymous with overpaid mediocrity, and how the weight of one contract was never his to carry, but defined his NBA legacy all the same. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Cristiano Felicio was a 6'10" center from Pouso Alegre, Brazil, known early on for his size, soft hands, and willingness to play physical around the basket. After developing in Brazil and briefly attending the University of Oregon, where he never got to play due to eligibility issues, Felicio returned to Brazil before eventually making his way back to the US for the 2015 NBA Summer League with the Chicago Bulls. Impressing the coaching staff with his energy, rebounding, and screen setting, Felicio earned a partially guaranteed deal and eventually carved out a role as a backup center behind Pau Gasol and Joakim Noah. Though raw, he showed flashes of potential during his rookie and sophomore seasons, averaging 4.8 points and 4.7 rebounds in 2016-17, while shooting over 57% from the field. Heading into free agency in 2017, Felicio was seen by some as a project worth investing in, and by others as a fringe NBA player. The Bulls clearly believed the former. Stunt number 1, the contract that changed everything. In July 2017, Cristiano Felicio signed a 4-year, $32 million deal with the Chicago Bulls, a move that immediately stunned fans and analysts alike. At the time, he had just wrapped up his second NBA season, playing only 15.8 minutes per game and showing mild improvement as a reserve big. He wasn't a starter, didn't stretch the floor, and hadn't established himself as a shot-blocking presence. Yet the Bulls paid him like a future breakout. The timing couldn't have been worse. This was the same offseason the Bulls traded away Jimmy Butler, marking a full pivot into rebuild mode. Instead of saving cap space or stockpiling assets, they locked into a long-term deal with a player who hadn't proven much. The front office tried to sell it as a forward-thinking investment in youth and development, but Felicio's play never justified it. The contract itself became a burden, not just financially, but narratively. Felicio was suddenly expected to produce like a key rotation player, and when he didn't, frustration mounted. Worse, the deal became a symbol of the Bulls' dysfunction. Felicio became the punchline, his name often trending when analysts ranked the worst contracts in the league. For a young player still trying to grow, that kind of scrutiny can derail confidence and development. His minutes steadily declined each season after signing the deal, as did his production. He went from promising low-cost project to an immovable cap figure, and eventually a player coaches didn't trust enough to put on the floor. The contract may have set him up financially for life, but from a basketball perspective, it froze his growth. Instead of rising slowly and steadily, Felicio was launched into expectations that he never asked for and ultimately couldn't meet. Stunt number 2, never developed an NBA-level skill. Cristiano Felicio's NBA career stalled because he never added a defining skill to separate him from the pack. In a league that demands specialization, Felicio remained a generalist. He had a solid frame and decent hands, but he lacked the rim protection of a true defensive anchor, the touch or footwork of a polished post scorer, and the vertical pop or agility to excel as a lob threat. As the game evolved toward faster, more versatile bigs, Felicio struggled to adapt and quickly became replaceable. Offensively, he could finish around the rim when set up, but had almost zero face-up game and didn't stretch the floor. He attempted just one three-pointer in his entire NBA career. Defensively, his slow feet left him exposed in pick and rolls, and he wasn't quick enough to hedge or switch. He averaged just 0.3 blocks per game for his career, numbers that made it difficult to justify his presence on the court unless everything else was clicking. The Bulls initially hoped he'd blossom into a reliable pick-and-roll partner and paint enforcer, something like a budget Clint Capella. But while Capella refined his timing, improved as a rebounder, and learned to play within schemes, Felicio seemed stuck in neutral. He never improved his conditioning, lacked the instincts to consistently be in the right place, and offered no intangible edge to make up for his deficiencies. The result was a player who couldn't be relied on in any game situation. Whether it was garbage time or a short rotation night, Felicio rarely impacted games in ways that mattered. And as younger, more dynamic bigs entered the league, his flaws became more glaring. What could have been a quiet, productive role as a 10-minute energy big turned into a constant reminder that in the NBA, potential alone isn't enough. You have to turn it into something real. Stunt number 3, stuck in Chicago's post-Jimmy Butler rebuild. Cristiano Felicio's NBA career didn't just decline because of what he lacked, it was also stunted by the chaotic environment he was dropped into. After the Bulls traded Jimmy Butler in 2017, the franchise spiraled into one of the worst rebuilds in team history. The roster lacked identity, the coaching staff lacked direction, and the front office, led by Gar Forman and John Paxson, made a series of questionable decisions that left young players like Felicio with no structure or real development plan. In theory, this should have been the perfect opportunity for a young big to carve out a consistent role. But instead of building a system around growth, the Bulls floundered. Head coaches changed, offensive philosophies shifted, and players were shuffled in and out of rotation with no consistency. Felicio went from backing up aging veterans to competing with raw rookies to becoming an afterthought altogether. There were seasons where he'd go weeks without playing, then be suddenly thrown into action only to underperform and get benched again. The team's poor performance also meant no meaningful minutes late in the season, no playoff reps, and no high-stakes game to sharpen his instincts. It was hard to tell whether Felicio wasn't improving or if he simply had no real chance to. Even in practice, the lack of veteran leadership or competitive culture around him made development stagnant. Meanwhile, the Bulls drafted and acquired other bigs like Wendell Carter Jr., Daniel Gafford, and Lou Cornett, each pushing Felicio further down the depth chart. By the time Chicago started showing signs of life again in the early 2020s, Felicio was no longer a part of their plans. Being stuck in a bad rebuild isn't always fatal, but for a fringe player like Felicio, it erased whatever momentum he once had and made his exit from the league inevitable. All in all, Cristiano Felicio's story is a reminder that not every NBA disappointment is rooted in laziness or lack of effort. Sometimes it's timing, environment, and expectations colliding all at once. Felicio didn't hand himself $32 million. He just accepted it. He didn't sabotage his own growth. He simply landed in a system that never truly knew what to do with him. While the jokes around his contract will probably follow him for the rest of his career, behind this is a player who showed up, did his job quietly, and became a casualty of a franchise that failed to support its core. His NBA journey may have ended in 2021, but the label of worst contract should say more about the Bulls than it ever did about him. Felicio got paid, yes, but in the end, he paid a price that money couldn't fix. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.